What's up, horror fans? Pete here from the Lassercast, and we have yet another author interview. I have been super excited about this interview for a long time because I get to interview one of my friends, Megan Stockton. Megan, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, of course. Megan is in my writers group, and I kind of like struck gold. I just like one day put out a feeler for some people to join a writers group, and Megan was one of them. And once I started to get the samples of like what people were writing, I was like, "Holy shit! I'm like out of my league here," you know.
No, you don't give yourself enough credit.
But today it is all about you, and I want to talk about your work. And you have a lot of things going on at the moment. And I just wanted to point out right now that I have read two of your books at this point. I've read Blue Jay and I've read Ethic. And so I was hoping we could talk about both today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. Okay, so if you go through the reviews on Amazon, you'll see a whole bunch of reviews for Ethic, and I see a pattern there. A lot of the times, the fans say that the book is very gritty and realistic, and that they really like the characters, and it was easy to follow because they like the characters. I can say that that like applies for Blue Jay too, because that's the way I felt when I was reading Blue Jay as well. So my question is, right off the bat, when you're setting up these characters, creating these characters, are they based on people that you know? Are they people that like maybe you've kind of read in other stories and you're like influenced by them? Like, where do you get your characters from?
That's kind of tough because it seems like they come out of nowhere. Every once in a while, I'll pick up on a weird like behavior somebody has, which that sounds weird, but like they have like a tick or something they probably don't even notice, and
Yeah.
it just like turns into a character. And it may be something I never even describe in the book, but they just kind of I don't know they become their own person basically.
Yeah, yeah. And in those descriptions that I was talking about too, like everyone keeps talking about how graphic the stuff is, right? And these characters that kind of come out of nowhere for you, some of them do kind of meet horrible ends. Like when you're coming up with these people, do you kind of know what their fate is going to be ultimately, or like does the story kind of lead you to what happens to them?
Usually I'm a pantser, so normally
Right.
I'll start off. Sometimes I know, like in Ethic, for example, when I started it, I thought a particular character was going to die at the end. I already knew how it was going to happen, but when I got there, they ended up not dying. It was someone else instead. So it doesn't always go the way that I planned. Sometimes I think I have plans, but they have other prerogatives. So I don't always know. Sometimes I do. It just kind of depends. But then things change as you're going through it.
Yeah. And like I've been kind of vague with my questions because I don't want to spoil either Blue Jay or Ethic. I want people to go out and read them. When does Blue Jay come out, by the way?
March, towards the end of March.
Okay, yeah. I'm just telling this to everyone watching right now. Like, definitely get Blue Jay when it comes out. The thing about Blue Jay though is that there are like definite like sequences where it's like you feel like okay, this is the sequence that I'm entering into. Okay, now it's done, and they almost kind of feel like in a movie like set pieces, right? It's like
Yeah.
oh, it's this part right here. Um, when you are making a horror story like Blue Jay, do you have those kind of set pieces in your mind, or like does the story just kind of guide like that Panther thing? Does it guide you to it?
Yeah. For the most part, I've always written. I guess people describe it as cinematically, and
Yeah.
I think that's what leads them to feel that way. Is my chapters are almost like scenes. Um, and I tried to get away from that at one point. I felt like I don't know. I felt like it was almost like lower level writing. But I've gotten to a point now that I like it, and I feel like it. Each chapter almost has a cliffhanger, so you want to go on. So I've kind of embraced it at this point. But I just stop when I feel like the chapter's done. If it's two paragraphs, if it's 17 pages, it doesn't matter. Just let it go where it wants to go, and when we're done, we move on to the next thing.
Okay. It's interesting, like right there, you just said like you feel like it's like lower writing if it's like cinematic. And I think there's like this kind of stigma with books that kind of feel like movies. It almost kind of
Mm-hmm.
implies like, oh, well, this isn't a real writer because it's not
Yeah.
like a novel. And the thing is, I never thought that for a second when I was reading Blue Jay because like there's two reasons why I personally think that Blue Jay feels cinematic, right? It's because the chapters are broken into POVs with the different characters, and they feel like the length of a movie scene. It's like, okay, here's this part's done, now we're moving on. It's very
Mhm.
utilitarian. But the other thing is that you are very, very good at like putting images into people's minds, but you don't like meander, and it doesn't like
Mhm.
it never feels like it drags. It's like this perfect kind of, you know, this is what I want you to see in your mind, and now we're moving forward. And I think that with movies, it's like, you know, you can just capture one thing in a movie in like 10 seconds where it might take you like 3 pages to say it
Yeah.
in a book, right?
Yeah.
It like, and I know that your husband, Derek Stockton, is a filmmaker.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that you've written screenplays with him. Um, did you ever like research screenplays or like read screenwriting books?
No, and he hates the way that I write his screenplays. Like it's not in the format he wants. I literally have like a line, and sometimes the line will be like the way I feel like the camera should be angled, which he doesn't always take that. But the way that I'm seeing it in my head, I'll be like, this is what this should look like, and this is what this character's doing, and what their face looks like, and how they're feeling. So sometimes that helps the actor a little bit because I'm like, you feel this way. And he hates the way that I write it, but it ends up going well. But I just he's asked me several times. He's like, why don't you look into how to format? That I don't. It's because I just have to write it as it comes to me. So it's just lines on a page. And bless his heart, he manages to get through it.
Yeah, right. Because like with screenplays, I kind of see what he's saying, where it's like, there's like the standard screenplay and what it looks like, right? And
Mhm.
like there's certain details that you don't normally include in a screenplay.
Yeah,
But it sounds like just when you're getting that story out there, it's just like what you envision.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like he has adapted some of your books into like trailers for your books, right?
Yes,
So he's done one for Quite Pretty Things, right?
yes.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
we're working on one for BLUEJAY. We're struggling with one location for a particular scene.
yeah.
But we're working on one for it too.
Oh, okay, okay. So for Quiet Pretty Things, that there's just the trailer, and then for Blue Jay, it's just going to be a trailer, or is it a plan to eventually make it into a full movie?
We would like to make it into a full movie. I guess it kind of depends on how well the book is received, and then getting the actors that are willing to kind of step outside their comfort zone just a little bit
Yeah,
for some of the stuff. So
yeah,
we had a, we had a couple that said that they weren't interested in being involved just because we live in a really rural area, and kind of sticking your toes into that kind of thing can be a little. But then we had a couple that said that they were interested, and they're doing the trailer, so we might eventually pursue a feature film for it.
okay. And then like here's going to be that tough part, right? When like A24 comes to make Blue Jay into a movie, you're
Mm.
gonna fight for Derek to be the director, or you're gonna good.
Ideally.
Yeah, yeah. Because I see this book blowing up. It's like I've read a lot of horror in the past 2 years, and it's like one of my favorite things that I've read. And I'm not trying to like just because I know you. It's like I love
I
it.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I just totally passed ethic. We just went right to Blue Jay. I think because I'm so
That's
excited about
okay.
talking about it. But here's the deal. Can you kind of explain to people what ethic is? 'Cause I feel like it's very different from Blue Jay, like totally.
Yeah, it's totally different. Ethic is set in a dystopian future, not too distant future, where homelessness is an illegal status. So homeless people are put into sponsorship programs where people can come in and pay to take them in in return they get free labor until that person's due is paid off. And ideally, in this program, it's to help that person get back on their feet. But of course, there's abuse.
Yeah. And you focus on two characters, right? Keegan, who is like from one side of the tracks, right? And like his father he had one of those sponsorship programs, and essentially Keegan has inherited it from him. And then there is the other guy that is in the system itself, 713, right? I got the right
Yeah,
number. Okay,
yeah.
yeah, right. It's 713, and he's like you kind of see like the worst case scenario of like
Mhm.
what it's like to be in this system.
Yeah.
And was that intentional to like show perspectives from both sides of the tracks?
Yes, yeah, I was hoping to have like two vastly different people who had, grown up even in two totally different ways. Just so you could kind of see. And I purposely made, I won't spoil anything, but I purposely made 713. He's kind of a despicable guy when you start off. He, robbed a woman, a pregnant woman, you know, in a park just for a couple of bucks. But I feel like you should come to kind of care for him, even though he's a victim of his circumstance. So I like having alternating perspectives like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that like in a lesser book, you would have made it that the privileged guy, Keegan, would have been like evil. And maybe
Mhm.
we wouldn't even seen it from his perspective. And at 713 would be like noble. And that's the way it would stay for the whole book. But I like that you kind of make us empathetic with both characters on both sides. With that system, though, it doesn't feel like it's like far off in the future. Like it honestly, it just feels like it's like one step away from where we are
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
And then so like, did you write ethic like kind of as a way to get out anxiety about how you felt about the world?
Not necessarily. I actually, the first draft of Ethic I finished in college several years ago. I took a creative writing class just as like an elective, and we were supposed to attempt to complete a novel or novella in the month of November. Um, and I finished the first draft of it, and it was actually twice as long as the one that I published. I ended up trimming it down. There was a lot of fat. I felt like the story was kind of getting lost in there. But I had heard on the radio, and it's actually a Knoxville station, I think. There was a woman that they interviewed, just a random lady, off the street, and she was complaining about all the homeless people that were sleeping under the bridges and stuff, and they were talking about possibly making it illegal to sleep on public property.
Mm-hmm.
And then the interviewer just asked, well, what do you think they should do with these people? Like, where do they go? Like, they literally have nowhere to go. And she started talking about like putting them basically in a prison just for homeless people was kind of what she went for there. And I was like, well, the government could take that and spin it on a way that seems very palatable, when presented to people. And I feel like any good dystopian novel is just kind of almost like a warning, like this is kind of where you are. This is where you could be very easily. So it wasn't necessarily any anxiety that I had, but just a cautionary tale that I kind of wanted to spin.
It just feels like it's an evolution of where we are, and it's not even like this big drastic evolution. Like I think that when you use the word dystopian, like people automatically just kind of think like the Hunger Games
Yeah,
and
post
like
apocalypse or something. Yeah.
right, right. Is there other are there other books that you've encountered that are similar to yours where it's like it's not that far fetched, like it's very like likely this could happen?
Honestly, kind of 1984. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
read
yeah,
it.
yeah,
I mean, it's a little more out there.
yeah,
Um, but I feel like at the time, he was taking concepts that he felt like were very plausible, and the world very well could have and maybe has kind of gone the way that he was expecting. But I kind of followed more along the lines of 1984 or like Atlas Shrugged or Brave New World, stuff like that.
yeah,
Um, versus like, you know, um, I have no mouth, but I'm a scream or a boy and his dog or something, like we didn't go that far with it, Mad Max.
yeah.
but and I like that kind of story, but I was wanting something that almost had that eerie quality of I could see this happening. You get a little too comfortable in that world.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even like I could see this happening. It's almost like, oh, is this next week's headline? You know,
Yeah.
like, oh, we've started these new programs and it's for the home. It's like, oh, okay, that's the next thing. Okay. You
Yeah.
know, um, but you said that you wrote this in November, well, assuming for NaNoWriMo, right?
Yeah, it was a class assignment, but that was kind of the goal, was to have it done by then. And that was back in probably um maybe 2010 or something.
Okay.
And I sat on it for a while. I had this period where I was kind of down in the dumps for several years, and I didn't do a lot of writing. And then I decided to pick it back up and kind of dust it off, and I like to trim the fat off of it, and then I published it
Yeah.
just a couple of years ago. So
Well, I know, like, because we've kind of talked about your writing process, like, in our groups and stuff too. And you just even on the show said that you're a pantser. Like,
mhm.
did you find that NaNoWriMo was like a good experience for you?
I have tried just about every year to do it, and I
Yeah.
just can't. And I almost think it's the pressure of having like, because I don't do well with like deadlines and structure and stuff. That's just not how I just don't operate well. It stresses me out. And I think that just I joined a local group last year. Well, sort of local, it was an hour away. And we had like a Discord channel, and I didn't have a lot of interaction well there because everybody was either doing like romance or well, it's mostly romance or young adult stuff, and so nobody really wanted to read any of my stuff. So I didn't have anybody to engage with. So I failed last year too. So I've just not been any good at having a set deadline like that. So
Yeah, but it's kind of ironic though, because like whenever we're in our group, I always feel like I always hear you saying like, "Oh, well, I'm writing this piece for this compilation. I'm writing this piece for this compilation." Then you get accepted into these things. So it sounds like you're pretty prolific though, in general.
I actually hadn't been until I got a new job started November of last year.
Yeah.
And so this has been like an awesome year for my writing. Like it's been amazing. I've written more this year than I've written in the past probably 10 years.
Wow.
Just because before I just didn't have the mental or emotional energy to do it. And so this has been great. And I don't feel like I'm good at short stories. So I
Mm.
hadn't been really submitting to any anthologies before this year, but I found that it's a good way to help me like tighten up a story. So they're good little exercises, and for the most part, I can get them done by the deadline if it's far enough out.
Yeah.
So it's been a good experience.
Yeah, I feel like because we can kind of name drop some of the other people in our group, but like I feel like Josh McMillan, in our group, I think he's really good about like, hey, here's this upcoming anthology, or like, you guys
Yeah,
interested in this? And then like on the inverse of that, like Jay Mazer, who's also in our group, like she always is like, I'm in this anthology, and you're like, so
yeah,
it's kind of like you get the like, hey, you should do this, and then you also see like this is what it might become, and I think
yeah,
it's good inspiration.
yeah, yeah. It is.
But you also like, because one of the other things I was interested in was this film festival that you did with your husband, and it kind of
Mhm.
reminds me a little bit of NaNoWriMo because there is a time constraint for it, right?
Yeah.
The one you just did. You
Mhm.
want to just tell us what that was about so I don't mess it up?
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's fine. My husband likes to be involved in like local film festivals, and so the Knoxville Film Festival every year has two different competitions. One you have to be selected to be in, and that was the Tennessee 10. They picked 10 filmmakers that they feel like best represent like the cream of the crop, basically. So he was in that this year, and we had that one was longer. It was like 60 days or something to complete a film, and it didn't have any parameters. We could make whatever we wanted as long as it was up to 17 minutes long, something like that. But then the other one's the 7-day shootout, and anybody can enter that. You have some people that shoot movies on their cell phones. Like, it doesn't matter. Anybody can be in it. And they'll give you 7 days to write, edit, and turn in a 7-minute film. And you draw a genre, so you don't know what your genre is before you start. And then you have 3 random props that you have to use. They have to actually have purpose in the film. They can't kind of be in the background.
Right.
So we do those every year, and they're a challenge and they're a lot of fun. It stresses me out. It's because he's like, okay, this is the genre. What do you have? So then I've got to come up with something on the fly. But we usually just go with my gut, and it turns out okay most of the time. But if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't get it done.
Yeah. Are you able to tell about the details of like what you guys pulled and?
Yeah, since they've already screened and everything, those are available on Facebook now. The one we did for the Tennessee 10 is about a 911 dispatcher in a rural area, and he takes a 3 to 5 a.m. shift, and he's the only dispatcher on call. And he gets a phone call about a girl who thinks that there's someone trying to break into the house she's babysitting at.
Mhm.
And then the 7-day shootout is about 2 children that are abducted by a kidnapper, and they try to escape.
Yeah. And you're pretty familiar with the children that starred in that, right?
Yes, that was my children, little heathens. They enjoyed it though. They had a good time.
Right, right. So like it sounds like your family just in general are really involved in this whole creative process too.
Mm. Yeah,
And, and like you guys also make like beard oils too, right?
Yeah, I make like beard oil and lotions and stuff like that. It's just kind of fun.
It's weird, like, doing an interview with someone that you know, because I'm like, "You make beard oils," and it's like, I fucking wear them on my face, like, I know what they are, I already have them.
Yeah.
They're freaking awesome though too,
Thank you.
and, like, if anyone wants to order them, is there, like, a website they can go to, or
I have a Facebook page that I use that they can just message me, or they can go to Ginger Bros Biscuit Company is the Facebook page, and they can message me there too.
Yeah, the oils are fantastic. They have, like, different kinda spooky names, like
Mhm.
Chupacabra and, like,
Yeah.
Patient Zero, and, they all smell good, and you even
Yeah.
have, like, a little description for each one too, and I just thought it was freaking awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, like, you got, like, awesome merch, like, if people look right up at the top of the video, they can see there's this weird ass cat right in the top, and
Yeah.
that cat is, like, in all your stories, right?
Yeah, there is it's like a little Easter egg in all of my novels or novellas anyway. I can't always squeeze it into a short story.
Mm,
But he shows up, and usually somebody's gonna die or something if the cat shows up. But yeah, it's always an orange cat. Sometimes his description changes a little bit, but he's always orange and always kind of scraggly.
yeah,
So
and, people can get, like, magnets and stickers of
mhm.
him too, right?
Yeah, yep.
You have a whole bunch of things coming out in the future. Are there things that you can talk about right now?
Uh, yes, I have. Um, well, I have a novel coming out in December that I can for sure talk about.
Okay.
Um, and that is it's a little bit more low key than most of the stuff I write. It's kind of a um, slower burn, but it's a werewolf novel. And it's small town setting, like I do most of my stuff. Kind of a murder mystery is what it starts out as, and kind of goes from there. But it's been a lot of fun to write, especially when you know how like when you're in high school and they're like, oh, the author made the curtains red to symbolize. I actually have some stuff in there that I hope people pick up on. Uh,
Symbolism, yeah.
so that was fun.
Mhm.
Um, but so it's coming out in December. I don't know a date for sure yet. It'll kind of depend, but it's called "And Nobody Knows It But Me."
Mhm.
And then BLUEJAY's coming out in March, and I am in for sure one more anthology this fall. I don't know if I can say what it is yet.
Okay, okay.
Um, and then I submitted to one more, which was my Bizarro thing. I don't know if I got into that or not.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not. I don't plan on submitting to any more anthologies this year. I don't think.
Really?
I think that's it. I think I'm done for the year.
Well, until January, right? Then next
Right.
year. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Next year I'll start over.
Right. Nice, nice, nice. So, the werewolf story you got coming out, but then BLUEJAY's coming out next year in March.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, like, with BLUEJAY, um, I don't want to spoil it, but, like, what could be your, like, little premise that you could tell everyone just so they can get kind of interested?
It's about three just average guys that get together for movie nights, and they watch terrible horror movies, but they're always trying to find the grossest new movie or whatever. And one of them has gotten them tickets to an immersive horror experience in a nearby town. And of course, things go terribly wrong.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and I feel like we shouldn't even go anywhere past that because that
Yeah.
was the fun of reading it was kind of like, oh, what's going to happen next? But these three guys, I wanted to talk about the three guys because
Mhm.
that's what really hooked me. Phil, Jack, and Noah, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
now you said that these characters kind of emerge into your subconsciousness, and maybe there's like little pieces of people. Um, are there any kind of qualities that you've taken from like guys that you know growing up, or like friends that you might even have now that are in these
Um,
guys?
kind of. Me and a couple of my friends used to do what they're doing, kind of, is finding just the grossest movies horror movies we could find, or books as well. That was a big thing for me for a while. Just for the shock value, I guess. I don't really know, but that was like the thing we bonded over. Um, and Phil is an EMT, and so my dad and my brother are both EMTs. Well, my dad's retired now.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say some of his personality because you've read his personality, but just some of his mannerisms, and then the way that people treat him, greet him on the street and stuff. Everybody knows who he is, even though they don't know who he is because he's an EMT. I
Right.
pulled some of that kind of from the way that people behave around both my dad and my brother. uh, in public.
Yeah.
Um, and then uh, Jack, some of his characteristics were based on a guy I met like 3 times years and years ago,
Hmm.
and it was just the way that he had like this. Um, I don't want to give anything away, but he's very low key and just kind of everybody liked him. Like he was part of the friends, but he was really chill and everybody else was really loud. But I just felt like if you put him in the right situation, he would. And I obviously don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
You know, I've I wasn't friends with him or anything, but I just kind of just from observing people, which makes me sound creepy, I guess. But
No.
just picking up on like little things from people, and it just becomes, and it's always a small thing, and it just becomes this full blown character, you know.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything creepy about that whatsoever. Like as writers, I think that we observe people just naturally, like without even
Yeah,
thinking. And
yeah,
honestly, there's so many fucking boring people in the world that you
yeah,
don't pick up on things. So when someone's kind of slightly interesting, you kind of zero in
yeah,
on it. You're like, oh,
yeah.
that's interesting. Um, and so, what about Noah though? You said that he's kind of like you and your friends being interested in this like gross books and gross
Yeah.
movies. That's his main inspiration.
Well, I feel like no, everybody has a Noah. I mean, really, like he's just there, and I kind of I've always felt sorry for that person because there's always one. I've had one in my friendship group growing up and stuff, and it's like I guess we like him, like we just kind of have him along, but he kind of annoys you too, and like nobody, if you have to partner up, nobody wants to partner up with him, or I
Right,
feel
right.
bad for him because I'm like that, I feel bad for that person at the same time, but I feel like everybody's got one,
Yeah.
and so and they're easy to blame even when it's not their fault. Something's not their fault. They're the scapegoat. But
Yeah. It's so funny because you're writing this and you live in Tennessee and you're talking about how your dad is an influence for Phil and your brother, right? And yet, like that was what brought me into this book because I was like, oh, Phil is like my friend Mike in New York. And I'm
mhm,
from New York, right? And
yeah,
then like I kind of feel a little bit like Jack. And then like you said, everyone has like a Noah. I kind of know people that are there's like different parts of them that could fit into Noah, right?
yeah,
And I just think that's really telling of your work because like obviously like, you come from a different part of the country than I do, and yet like it's like universal, and I can latch
yeah.
on to that. So I think that's what's going to get people to buy into this book. Um, you said before that you were always trying to find, or like for a period of time in your life, like kind of extreme movies or gross books.
Mhm.
Um, do you make it a point to come up with the most unsettling things in your books, or is it just sort of just naturally happens?
Not I didn't like strive for that in Blue Jay. When I started off, I thought that that's what I was gonna do is try
Hmm.
to just top everybody. But then I hate it when I like you're going too far with something, and I'm like you're totally losing the story is very important to me, and the characters are very very important to me. The characters are probably the most important to me, and so I don't want to ever do anything just to do it. So if that's dipping my toes here into extreme horror, I'm never going to be as extreme as the stuff that I like to seek out because I feel like I'm losing plot and I'm losing characterization if I push it too far.
Yeah.
So it'll probably never scratch the itch for a lot of people, but it's going to be a good story. So
Yeah, it's interesting because like I seem to ask these questions a lot when I interview horror writers because I think I'm so intrigued by the idea of like intentionally writing things that are upsetting, you know.
mhm,
And I remember I interviewed Robert Essig a couple of months ago, and I asked him a very very similar question, and he kind of said something very similar to you too, which is like it's the story that matters, it's the characters that matter, and you don't want to like veer away from that too much. And I think that that's kind of because I think there's so much stuff out there that's probably just written to be sensational,
yeah, yeah,
but it probably is easily forgotten, or maybe the writing itself isn't that enjoyable. It's just like,
yeah,
oh my god, they did this to this person, right?
yeah.
Um, but what sticks with you is the connections that you have with the characters, and I think people are going to have that with Blue Jay.
I hope so.
Yeah. Can anyone tell I like this book a lot? It's like it just must be so cool to like have your husband who makes like horror kind of movies, and then you write horror stuff. I mean, that just to have that common ground, and
Yeah.
and I kind of honestly think that you're just kind of just starting out. I know you've been around for a little while and like you have some books out there, but I feel like every time I go into our chat, it's like, oh, this is going to be coming out soon. This is going to be coming out soon. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm hoping this is kind of my new start. I feel like this year's been really good, and I hope it continues. I'm
yeah,
hoping it's not just like this one spurt and then we're done.
right. So for people that are watching this right now, I'm going to put all your links in the description below. But
Mhm.
if you want to just tell people, like if they're listening on the podcast and stuff, just like what can they find of yours right now and where can they find it?
Of course, Ethic and Quiet Pretty Things are both on Amazon. Quiet Pretty Things is a crime thriller, but everything I write has a horror element, even if it's not pure horror. And then I'm in several anthologies. Um, I have a Mothman story called Peppermint and Spice in Cryptid Carnage by Splatter Ink Publishing. That's on Amazon. Um, I have a Western horror short in A Book Without a Name called Dead Horse. And then I have a short called Q for Quaint in ABCs of Terror Volume 4. And I think that's all right now. Oh, no. I've got an alien summer camp story in Dead Heat by Crimson
Oh.
Pinnacle Press. So,
Yeah. What's real interesting is that like every time that there's been one of these competitions and you're like, oh, I think I'm gonna try for this one, then it's just been like, yep, you got it. Like
yeah, I've only had one rejection so far this year, and that was I had submitted to the Death's Head Western horror thing, and I think they were just taking. It had some big names on it, so I was like, I've got to at least submit to it.
sure.
And I didn't get into it, but I repurposed that story. Benjamin Blankenship, who I think you're going to be talking to soon,
Hmm.
has an anthology coming out next year, and he's going to take that story, and I think it'll be a really good fit for that anthology. So,
Yeah. He just put the cover out for that, right?
yeah,
Yeah, the cover looked pretty sick, yeah.
yeah.
And so then like what about like as far as a website or like Twitter and shit?
I'm on Twitter, I think M Stockton author, and then I'm on Instagram, I think Megan Stockton author. I have a Facebook page, a TikTok that I don't really update like I should, and then
Mhm.
my website is meganstocktonbooks.com.
Okay, yeah. So people could definitely check it out. Just get to know your stuff. I'm telling you that Megan is a fantastic writer and that I am just so lucky that I'm in a group with her. Um, would you ever want to come back on the show and just talk with both me and Danny if I can get him on here?
Oh, of course, yeah,
Okay, awesome. Okay. I'm the one that does most of the reading for our channel, but like every so often Danny will get an audiobook or something and he'll
yeah.
join too. But yeah, maybe and then we can always just talk about movies and stuff too, because I
Oh,
like
yeah.
talking about movies with you. Yeah. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today. And I guess I'll see you at our next meeting.
All right, thank you.